DrSayus.
No More Heroes is a single-player action-adventure hack and slasher developed by Grasshopper Manufacture. The game was directed, designed and written by the special one known as Pseudo51, who's known for his quirky games. It was published by Marvelous Entertainment, Ubisoft and Rising Star Games. Why is there so many publishers? The strongest aspect of No More Heroes is the narrative. 5 out of 5. Be Otaku Warrior, Travis Touchdown, and kill the top 10 assassins ranked above you to be number 1, just to pay off his anime, video game, and wrestling tape addiction. Humour is over the top, yet on point as it doesn't feel forced or cringy. Travis and his employer slash future wife Sylvia share chemistry in their complicated relationship. Meanwhile, his interactions with bosses and NPCs often register a double take. Travis himself is a lovable dolt who grows in skill and as a person during the story. Although he's killing an endless amount of goons to reach his goal, it's seen as tongue-in-cheek. Killing aside, I see a piece of myself in him. Maybe it's the otaku thing. The only flaw I found was before each boss you get a non-skippable drawn out call from Touchdown's lady friend. When I first seen this there was just silence and I thought the game was broken, but it turns out I just had my Wiimote speaker turned off. You can set this so you hear it from the TV, but it's strange No More Heroes never warned me about this. The calls aren't interesting anyway. Audio is a 4 out of 5. Everyone's voice acting is on point. It's night and day compared to the game's trailer.
Your shining armor and fine words won't get you anywhere.
Travis in particular delivers his lines of soul, attitude and charm.
And there he was, this cat, well dressed, cool, couldn't tell if he was the shit or just plain all shit.
The soundtrack uses ambience for Travis's day-to-day routine, an anime girl-like theme when talking to Sylvia, and rock tracks during combat. They all set the appropriate mood and don't drown out the dialogue. My favourite sound effect is Travis's lightsaber swings and motorbike, as there's an oomph to them. There's also plenty of retro game sounds to fit Touchdown's otaku style, like the post-boss scoreboards, which resemble something from an 80s arcade cabinet. Also the sound effects to include bleeps and bloops reminiscent of 8-bit Nintendo games. My only gripe with the audio is enemies say the same thing whenever you see them or die, like, "You're so sweet," and "my spleen." I prefer them just to say their line once and keep their mouth shut for the rest of the level, so I try to block them out. Visuals are 4 out of 5. No More Heroes uses cel shading combined with strong light and shadows for a cartoony yet gritty look, reminding the player that you may be jolly and wisecracking Travis Touchdown, but you're also a killer. It's the best example of light and shadow that I've seen, certainly on the Wii. This complements having hordes of enemies on screen being chopped up with Travis's quick sword slashes and the pools of blood that shoot out of the corpses. In the latter half of No More Heroes, the frame rate briefly takes a hit as a big number of enemies are being sliced at once, but it's a rare occasion and certainly doesn't get in the way of things. The open world is also affected by hardware limitations. Draw distance is short, which is very apparent when speed boosting on your bike, though I prefer this over textures popping into existence as you approach them, which there is none of that here. Props given to the city for having colour and not 50 shades of grey like in a lot of open worlds like GTA. However, the buildings are rendered at a very low resolution, with most of them looking like vacant lots disguised as being lived in. Though given Santa Destroy's reputation for being a city of dropouts, you could say it fits the theme. The only bug I found was when the beach boss fell into the rock they were standing on. I don't have the footage and it only happened once, so it's no big deal. Controls 3 out of 5, the weakest part of No More Heroes. Armed with a lightsaber, mow down waves of identical goons through long corridors by mostly tapping A and finishing them with the flick of a Wiimote. Target and block with Z, which you do a lot. Unfortunately, the targeting system is bad against multiple enemies, which occurs often. If the enemy blocks, punch them with B to dizzy them, and perform wrestling moves with waggle. There's directions, but they don't always work, so waggling is your best bet. Also tilt the Wiimote to do low or high attacks with the saber, an actual good use of motion control as it's easier than if you had to press a button. Unsurprisingly, there is a delay using the motion controls. You're given time to perform a slash on finishing enemies, so here it adds to the experience. There are moments however you have to shake the Wiimote and nunchuck or move them in both directions to perform a grapple, and it's not always responsive. Accessibility 4 out of 5. No More Heroes has an optional tutorial before you play, which you should do as the controls won't be explained again. The only problem is it throws all the mechanics at you at once. As the controls are simple, it's not overwhelming. It just takes 10 minutes to slog through. Thankfully, this is the only big offender. No spoilers, but after beating the #1 assassin, make sure you have bought all the lightsabers. This lets you unlock the real ending and fight the final boss. If you didn't choose the real ending like I foolishly did, just load up your last save. At least I had the sense to do that. To access this, when you boot up No More Heroes, press the plus button. Hopefully you saved after beating the game. Thankfully, I am a frequent saver in more ways than one. No More Heroes doesn't tell you any of this. I happened to find out by chance through Google. Otherwise, I would have missed the final boss if I'd even known about it. They also don't tell you about the #1 assassin's story, which can be accessed on YouTube. Make sure you complete the game before watching though. Gameplay 3 out of 5. Booting up No More Heroes takes you straight to Touchdown's apartment, a clever in-game menu screen. Levels are set in different locations of Santa Destroy, like a school, baseball stadium or a mansion. As it's on the Wii, most areas are in buildings, but it is a city after all. To mask this, when you kill an enemy, blood spurts out, all Japanese like. Unless you're playing any non-American Wii version where the blood is swapped with ink. Still not one for the kiddies. You enter a boss by shoving a big wad of cash into an ATM machine. Isn't it supposed to be the other way around? Earn money, you do side jobs and assassination missions. Jobs are mini-games such as tapping A to steal watermelons from trees or mowing somebody's lawn with motion controls. And they're all managed by the chap from the job centre, probably Pseudo51 himself. I would have preferred these to be optional though and just focus on the main story, rather than having to play them each time to raise cash to unlock the next main level. Some missions like kill waves of enemies in a location you've already been in feel like unnecessary padding, but luckily there is fun to be had in the grind. You travel to locations on a futuristic motorbike that would give Wario a run for his money. The setting is Santa Destroy, an unfinished open world filled with invisible walls, amateurish collision detection, and is a gigantic waste of time. You can't steal cars and the police ignore you, even when you kill people in front of them, which is why there's no open world in the sequel. Truth is, I wouldn't mind it so much if I didn't have to keep driving up and down the same locations. So halfway through No More Heroes, I noticed that Z activates nitrous oxide in your bike, which makes traveling more bearable. There's also places where you can buy clothes, better lightsabers, or train naked with a middle-aged Japanese man whose button mashing minigames made me damage my A button on my Wiimote. When you're ready to go home, just drive into the lake and it'll take you straight there. Most game settings are in your motel room. You can save by sitting on the toilet. It's one of those games. A brief special power activates when you kill enough enemies, though in my case it always activates when I've killed all the enemies. I'm always stuck waiting until it's finished. Honestly, I would have had a better experience if they weren't even in the game. Every swing of your saber uses energy, so you charge it quickly by pressing 1 and jacking off. Charge attacks look impressive, but they're not useful. They take too long to charge and are cancelled out if you're hit. They also drain most of your beam sword. When you're knocked to the ground, you need to keep bashing A to get up. This gives enemies time to kick you while you're down, and if there's a large group of them, you won't be getting up. This only really happened to me at a beach mission where I had to wait a full minute for the clock to run out and I couldn't do anything about it. Annoyingly, if you fail a mission, it disappears and you have to drive all the way back to the assassination building, then accept the mission, then drive all the way back and start the mission again. There's also points of the map marked with M. These let you defeat a bunch of goons without getting hit, but they're really difficult to do, and honestly they're not really worth it unless you have something to prove. To respawn those missions you have to go back to your motel and go back to them again, which is too much hassle. But if they're on the way, why not? Challenge 4 to 5. You can choose between sweet or mild difficulty. I chose mild. I'm not a complete pushover. The first few hours are too easy. Aside from the bosses, you actually have to study their movements to be able to counter them. You can't just swing like a madman most of the time, as bosses are invulnerable for an unexplained reason. Still, it's a good excuse to have good boss fights. Missions are ranked based on how well you do, which encourages you to go for gold. Oddly, it keeps your weapons and stats from your last completed game, so it's pretty much like New Game Plus for Nintendo games. There's also another possible ending to choose for the game completion, which is just a longer version of the original ending. Unfortunately, there's no boss select like there was in No More Heroes 2 or level select. You have to play the whole campaign again, and because of the padding in between story missions, it may be too much to expect from players. Completing No More Heroes once is 10 hours long. It's an average single player game length. Uniqueness 4 to 5. Apart from Star Wars, not many games let you run around with a lightsaber slicing goons which explode into blood. I've been gaming and watching anime for 24 years, and I've never experienced a story similar to No More Heroes. Feels like I'm playing an over-the-top anime, which is a good thing. There's a lot of button mashers, but few match the style and humour found here. It's let down by the bloat that you need to sift through, like the poor man's GTA open world, and I'm comparing it to the old GTAs here, as well as repetitive missions before you're able to play a story mission to see some funny cutscenes and fight a challenging boss. A lot of this filler wasn't included in No More Heroes 2, which is the superior title that I played years ago, if memory serves me well, though my memory's pretty shoddy. I recommend skipping to No More Heroes 2 unless you're big into the franchise or desperate to know how the story began, but it's not required. With that said, No More Heroes 1 is still a solid title with fun moments, and I'm glad I played it. I give No More Heroes a B+, 7 out of 10. Despite its flaws, there's few games that match the charm and charisma of No More Heroes. It's a very unique title as well, and it has a lot going for it, which is why the franchise is quite loved. It's certainly my favourite Pseudo 51 franchise. I've played a few games of his in the past, which have been a bit spotty, but I really like No More Heroes. It only gets a B+ because I'm changing my reviews to be more critical, not just going by personal feelings. I have to take some points off because of No More Heroes shortcomings, but it's still a fun game and definitely worth playing.